right. So if everybody could please mute their line if they're not going to be speaking. The mute button is down in the left-hand corner. It looks like a little microphone. If you just click on that, that will mute your line so that we don't get any background noise. All right. So we may have a few more people hop in. That's totally cool. Hi, my name is Shannon Bradley. I am with Down Under Endeavours, and I want to say thanks so much to everybody for joining us this evening, and also special thanks to our 5 Kiwi presenters that are coming to us live from New Zealand this morning, which is 10 a.m. their time on Wednesday. So just a couple of housekeeping and logistics issues. As I said, please make sure that your line is muted, just so that we don't get any background noise and it's easy for everybody to be able to hear. If you have questions that you would like to ask the speakers, please just make sure to put those in the chat box. We've got Audra taking a look at that, and so we will try to get to all of your questions at the end, but we do have some questions to ask our Kiwi guests throughout. So let's go ahead and introduce our hosts for this evening. Oh, there's a lovely dark screen. You can't see our pictures. All right. Hang on.
Don't know what happened there. That was
okay. No problem. That's all right. You'll get to see our faces anyway, but I'm happy to have Laura and myself. We are both New Zealand experts for Down Under Endeavours. We have David Hurst from Naitahu Tourism, Geraldine from Wayfair, Patrick Dalt, who is from Inbol, and he'll be talking about the middle of the North Island and Rotorua. And then we can't see Richard's name on there, but he's on there. Richard from Whare Koho, which is a fabulous luxury lodge in New Zealand. And then also Brad Patterson, who is with Helicopter Line. So you'll get to hear from all of them as far as experiences, and we have some fun questions to ask them so that you can get a really good idea of what it's like to be out in the wilderness in New Zealand. So let's talk just really quickly. I know some of you know some things about Down Under Endeavours, and you've been on these calls with us before. But just so for those of you who don't know, we are truly experts in the South Pacific. We send a lot of people to Australia and New Zealand. We've been in business for about 22 years, and we really focus on personalizing your trip and making sure that the trip is that, is checking all the boxes and doing everything that you want to do on your trip. So this is our agenda. Hey, Candace. Yeah. I don't think any of the pictures are showing up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is kind of an important piece.
Want to see pictures of New Zealand?
Yes. Yeah. So,
now we've got David Bowie's back.
So everybody, if you could just hang with us for just a second. The pictures are really what make the presentation. So I just want to make sure that you guys get a chance to see those. So while we're waiting for Candace to pull that back up, just a couple of things. Laura, do you want to talk a bit about travel to New Zealand right now and where things are at and what we're recommending?
Sure. So currently we don't have an official update from the country. So just kind of pushing things off. Our thought is October 2021 and beyond, just to be on the safe side. We don't want you to plan a trip or that perhaps you may not be able to take and do all that work in order to postpone it. So we're just thinking that those dates are definitely going to be safe, and that's kind of what we suggest. We do work with all of the airlines that fly there, so even if one is, operating a much more robust schedule than the other, we're pretty flexible on being able to change that for you. So we can certainly look at options there and make a recommendation based on what is available. They have been pretty COVID-free. As you know, there have been a couple border cases recently. They are in quarantine, so they do definitely play it on the safe side.
They can find their photos. You don't want to hear about
kind of lockdown, but They have been pretty good. And I know they've had the opportunity to get out and
New
about a
Zealand,
bit more than we
many
have.
cases of coronavirus, but they're not going to have anybody come visit for over a year. But I want to go visit there.
Did someone have specific questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we've got just a handful of people that aren't muted yet. Candace, I know you can't hear me. Would you like me just to share my screen and do it from my end?
No, Shannon, we'll be good in about 2 seconds.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for the patience. Thanks, Laura. One of the great things about New Zealand, and Laura and I can attest to one of the reasons why we absolutely love New Zealand, is just the sheer beauty. And when you go to New Zealand, there's just a charm about the country that you physically just feel yourself slowing down and taking in nature. And Laura and I are both big city girls. We live in Chicago. We love the city, but there's just something about New Zealand. And my parents always say to me, they're like, we can't believe you love New Zealand because it's so wilderness based and you're such a city girl. But there's just a charm to the country, whether you're, you know, hiking or you're sitting and drinking a glass of wine, which is usually what I'm doing. But there's just so many different things to see. And the hospitality of the Kiwis is just it's just such a wonderful place. All right. Did I fill the time? Yay, good job, Candace. All right. That's perfect. Now we can see the pictures. So now you can see everybody there.
Tech guru, no big deal.
Good job. Candace, if you can just go ahead and go to the first Abel Tasman slide. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite experiences in New Zealand and one of my favorite places. It's called Abel Tasman National Park. It is on the, if you can see the map there, it is on the top end of the North Island. It is a national park that they do not let any motorized vehicles into except for boats on the water. So once you get into the park, you're either kayaking, you're hiking, you're on a boat, and the sound, there's just absolutely pristine, beautiful New Zealand bush, and there's just no sound other than the birds. So one of the companies that we like to use in Abel Tasman is called Abel Tasman Charters. It's owned by Rod Stewart, and yes, that is his real name. He's a lovely Kiwi, and it's just a feeling of that you're on a friend's boat. We happen to be on the boat with just him, but the maximum they can take is 10 to 12 people. That obviously was pre-COVID. I'm not sure if Rod is going to be changing that a bit, but it certainly is a small group, and it feels like you're just going out with a bunch of friends. Now, you do have to enter the boat from a tinder, so you do get your feet wet because the boat is anchored out in the water. So Candace, you can go to the next slide. So your day really begins with a tea or coffee on the boat, and you start to move out into the park. Now, there's lots of places for people to do kayaking. As you can see here, there's some kayakers on the beach, but they also take you over to Split Apple Rock, which literally is a rock that is open. Whoops. And so I'm going to keep going. So it's just really it's just really a wonderful day. You can try the next slide, Candace. There we go. So there's all kinds of things that you can do, and it's a full day. So Rod has kayaks off the back of his boat. He's going to drop you at several beaches where you can see this is me here just taking a walk here on the beach. And this little picture down here, the one in the right, this is Buster. This is Rod's dog. And he is a border terrier, and sometimes he gets to ride on the boat, and he has been known to jump off the boat and swim with the dolphins that are swimming by the boat. So it's a pretty cool experience. And let's just go to my last slide here, which is a lovely little video showing you the fur seals that you can see. So this video here shows, you can see there's going to be a seal in the middle there that comes and hops down into the water. And these were little baby fur seals. So Rod takes you out into on the Tinder boat, and you can actually go into some of these small coves and see these super cute little seals. They were playing that day. It was just an absolutely stunning day, and I think it's a really good way to experience remote wilderness in New Zealand. You don't see other people around, you just hear the birds, and it's just a fabulous day. There's also a lovely wine tasting area in the area, so that also works great in an itinerary. So I'm going to turn over to Laura, and she's going to talk a bit about her experience at Lake Moeraki.
Thanks, Shannon. So if you are driving up the West Coast, perhaps from Queenstown to Abel, Tasman National Park, you might stop at a little place called Lake Moeraki, which is just after Haas Pass. It would be really easy to drive right by it because there's no other lodging or shops for at least an hour. Jerry founded and manages the lodge still. He's been there for over 30 years. And I think we're just stick with us as they're working through our technical difficulties. But Jerry has basically been working to bring infrastructure like power, phone lines, and the occasional internet signal to this corner of New Zealand. So just to give you an idea of quite how remote you are when you're in this spot. And we can go to the next slide. As you pass through mountains and waterfalls to get there, you'll see that Lake Moeraki consists of a variety of topography, such as this lush green rainforest that you may hike to get to the beach itself. The beach is also where you see the rare Fiordland crested penguins, which is one of the highlights of your stay here. If you're there during the right season, they're best seen during their breeding season, and that is August to early December. But the Wilderness Lodge also offers several other activities during your stay. This is the beach here. From hiking to birding, Jerry actually has named several of the birds that are there. So they're kind of like his friends. And he knows several of their calls, so he can kind of get them to swing by so you can have a look at them. Kayaking and fishing is also available. My personal favorite was seeing the glowworms at night up close. And because it's so dark there with nothing else nearby, getting to see the beautiful night sky. So this is a room itself at Wilderness Lodge. The lodge itself has a common area where breakfast and dinner are served. And then a packed lunch is usually taken with you on whatever your daily adventure is. And the food is unpretentious, but really, really good. And here you'll see, again, the room. There are 20 rainforest rooms and 4 river view rooms. So you're only going to have a max of 48 people at one time here. And you'll find the rooms pretty comfortable and very clean, if not just a little bit on the dated side. But overall, I was super impressed with my stay. And if you're looking for something unique and off the grid with kind local people and
I think. Did Laura? Okay.
So it's my pleasure to introduce our first guest, who's Geraldine. And she is coming to us with Real Journeys.
Actually, she's with Wayfair.
Here.
That's okay. Here's your map, Geraldine.
Oh, hi there. Kia ora, everybody, and thank you very much for dialing in, and a massive shout out and thank you to the amazing team at Down Under Endeavours for organising this. And obviously we can't travel to get to see them, so this is our next best thing. This is the new norm. But yeah, massive thanks to them for organising this so that we can still sell our destination, in hopes that when borders open and flights resume, that we welcome you down here as soon as possible. So I work for a company called Wayfair, and we like to say that we're experts in the south of the south, and that is the South Island of New Zealand. But I'm really here today to talk about 2 pretty phenomenal destinations within our portfolio, that being Milford Sound and Doubtful Sound. So if you can see on the map there, they are the pins on the map right on the coast there. So further north north, or the highest one being Milford, and then down the coast a little bit further, Doubtful Sound. So if I can have my next slide, I'm going to take you there as best I can in a COVID situation. So this is a snapshot of our vessel, the Milford Mariner, leaving Milford Sound. So to give you some idea of the size of Fiordland National Park, we obviously work in metrics, but it's 12,600 square kilometres. So converting that to miles, you're looking at about 4,900 square miles. So that's bigger than the Grand Canyon, bigger than Yosemite, a massive, massive national park in New Zealand. And most of it is inaccessible. You'll hear from a colleague, industry colleague of mine, Brad Patterson, who can take you there by helicopter, and also another colleague who has a really beautiful walk in the national park. But it is massive, and majority of it is inaccessible. So to be able to cruise in a fiord like Milford Sound is a pretty special thing. So shall I just carry on, Laura, about some points, or have you got any set questions?
Yes, you've pretty much covered kind of where it's located and whatnot, which I was going to ask, so that's great. If you can tell me a little bit about what the difference is between Milford and Doubtful Sound.
Sure. So Milford Sound, I guess that's your more iconic fjord or sound, like that's the one that most people have heard of. It is the home of the famous Mitre Peak, which I love that the Down Under Endeavours crew, without me even paying for, have included in some of their slides that iconic shot of Milford. So thanks for that, free advertising. But it is, I guess it's pretty accessible. So you can coach there from Queenstown or Te Anau if you want to overnight or base your itinerary in the South Island for a couple of nights in Queenstown. The other really good thing is that if you are short on time or you're wanting to take up a whole lot of things in your stay in Queenstown, we do offer flight connections from Queenstown or helicopters with my colleague Brad Patterson that you'll hear from later. So we can helicopter you into Milford, whereas Doubtful Sound, the accessibility is a little bit different, and I guess that kind of gives you the feeling that it's more remote. So if I were asked, having been there 50 times each probably, what the difference were, I would say that Milford is definitely your iconic. It is where you get those sheer dramatic cliffs that just fall straight into the ocean. But it is pretty accessible, so you can fly, helicopter and coach there. So therefore, I guess in a pre-COVID world, in New Zealand terms, you could say that it was quite popular. So some would say crowded at certain times of the day. But it's great. I mean, it's a pretty spectacular place. Obviously, it is a national park. It's also in a rainforest. So please don't expect the blue skies when the Down Under Endeavours team include a Milford Sound trip in your itinerary, because it does rain 265 days of the year. So, but don't let that put you off, because you get those beautiful waterfalls when it does. So that's probably my sum up of Milford. If I can move on to Doubtful, if I can just go back one picture, sorry. Oh, I'm going to this one. So to get to Doubtful Sound, that's an experience in itself. So as I said before, you can't coach or fly there. So to get to Doubtful, you start in a small lakeside town called Manapori. From there, we take you by boat across the lake, and then you coach over the Wilmot Pass, which is a complete landlocked road. And this photo here, or this image here, is taken of a couple standing at the top of the Wilmot Pass looking down into Doubtful Sound. Doubtful Sound is massive. It's absolutely massive. Compared to Milford, it's 3 times longer, and because of all of the arms and waterways that go off it, it's actually 10 times bigger. So, and because you can't drive or fly there, you get that real feeling, and I'm sure the Down Under Endeavours team can agree with me here, that you are in the middle of nowhere, that you have that true remote wilderness feeling. And Shannon, you spoke earlier about the basically the lack of sound when you're in Abel, Tasman. Well, I think that going to Doubtful is probably that on steroids, really. There's nothing sound of nature around you. So it is that true wilderness feeling, and the sheer scale being so much bigger. But I guess for Wayfare, the options that we can give you, we offer day and overnight cruises in both Milford Sound and Doubtful Sound. So depending on how much time you have, the Down Under Endeavours team can either, fit in a day option, or if you're really short on time, a day with a flight connection to Milford. But the creme de la creme is honestly staying overnight. So if you can get that worked into your itinerary, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Geraldine. I did the overnight in Doubtful, and I totally agree. I love it. If you have the time, I highly recommend it. So I agree with all of your points. Geraldine, one last question. Do you have any insider tips or tricks on packing or anything, activities that you think are a must do for this experience?
So I think kayaking on a fjord. Last time I did the Doubtful Sound overnight, I was basically in this image here. It wasn't, that obviously isn't me, but I had a seal rolling right next to my kayak paddle. So for those that are brave and a little active, absolutely take up the kayak option of the overnight cruise. For those that may be just wanting to, sit back, relax, there is a small tender that goes out in the afternoon that you can jump on to get a little bit more up close and personal. But in terms of packing, we are quite south on the globe, so even in summer it can get cold. So definitely pack an extra layer, and definitely pack the bug spray. There's a few sandflies.
And
Thank you.
just one other thing to add to, every single travel consultant with Down Under Endeavours, whoever you work with, has been out with Wayfair in some shape or fashion. So they can certainly help you out with questions that you may have as well.
Very true. Well, thank you, Geraldine. And next up, I'd like to introduce Richard, who's the general manager at Ferry Coho. Hi, Richard.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for being here.
That's all right.
So just to kick us off, can you tell us a little bit about the location of Ferry Coho and how you get there?
Yeah, I mean, like a good part of New Zealand, it's essentially in the middle of nowhere, but in the middle of somewhere. For me, I'll give you a bit more detail when I show you a map, because for those that aren't familiar with New Zealand, it's a little easier. But it's perfect. We're telepathically connected. I love this. We are in the North Island. I mean, one of the toughest gigs in New Zealand is talking about anything after talking about Milford Sound and Doubtful Sound. We are in the southern tip of the North Island. So we're a short hop, skip and a jump from the capital city of Wellington. So that's 10 minutes in a helicopter, which Brad will talk a bit about later. But, we use helicopters like Ubers here, for those that have never been to New Zealand. Or a 90-minute drive. Now, 90 minutes in this country, driving is very, very simple. We scratch our heads at 4 and 5 lane highways here. So it's a relatively simple process. I guess the other way to look at it in a bit of a fun way is if you were to, a word that we've become quite familiar with in New Zealand is pivot. But if you were to pivot the North Island there on that map, slightly, let's call it 90 degrees to the left, you end up with Te Ika Maui, the mouth of the fish. So we're in the mouth of the fish. We're hop, skip, jump. Where are we at? What we are, I mean, the first thing I often get is how do you get the word Whorikaho out of, how do you get an F starting phonetics out of the word that starts with WH? Well, WH becomes an FO when you phonetically move that. And so we are Whorikaho, it means place of knowledge. And what I really fell in love with this place, and to give you a bit of background, I've been here for about 15 years. So I think GM, I always have in brackets underneath emotional owner. It essentially translates to place of knowledge. And if you can imagine mountains that come essentially straight up out of the Pacific Ocean, and they form the North Island ridge of the Rimutaka Ranges running north. Our farmland, which is what you can see here, is a black sand beach with these terraces that rise 60 meters, 90 feet up out of the sand here. And I just think the whole property is I wouldn't say it's even geographically, it's just there's something about this property that from before Europeans set foot in New Zealand through to now, there's something magic about it. And a lot of that comes from the landscapes that we live in. So the entire property, everything we do relates in some way back to the land, and I guess the magic that brings.
That's
Next
the
slide.
perfect segue for my next question. I was going to ask you, what is uniquely New Zealand about Wharekoho? Because it is a very special property. So we'd love to learn a little bit and share a little bit about the activities and things there.
Well, first of all, probably the pronunciation and spelling, very uniquely New Zealand. But it's, I don't know, to give you the background, it's actually owned over the last 10 years by a gentleman from the States. And I love using this because this is his reason why he fell in love with this place. He came down here to play golf, bought a vineyard, came back, bought a lodge. It's my greatest upsell in the world. And I asked him what he fell in love with the place for, because everyone is very individual. His words to me were, it's very jeans and boots. It's New Zealand. It's what he thought New Zealand would be. It's not, we're not a country club. We're not trying to be something we're not. We're a genuine experience here in New Zealand. And I think that's what the collective we of New Zealand provide. It's not, nothing is plastic and created. It's not a Hollywood version of tourism. And this is exactly what he fell in love with, is the jeans and boots style, which in his eyes were epitomized in Wharekoho. Next slide, sorry. So for us, look, we are a 16-room, 16-cottage luxury lodge, but our roots, and I think it's always important to talk about the foundation before you talk about the first floor. The foundation for this property is that we are one of the oldest Romney sheep studs in New Zealand. Along the same lines of when the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in 1844, history lesson, I think, is when this property started becoming a sheep station. It was land that was broken in with the idea that sheep farming was going to be the gold standard of New Zealand business. Come 1978, 79, there was a lot of the lamb export to the UK changed, and we were told we must diversify. Everything seems to be cyclic at the moment. And so from becoming one of the most successful and oldest Romney sheep stations in New Zealand, next slide, we transitioned into becoming a luxury lodge. So for us, as a luxury lodge, we still keep that foundation of being a farm. We still want you to go out and explore. Right now, it's lambing time. So this is I guess the postcard moment of New Zealand, where you have lambs jumping in the paddocks and blue sky days. And we don't want to ever lose that, but we have enhanced the lodging aspect. So we are a relay and chateau property. As I said, we have 16 cottage suites. We have, in that main building there, we have a 50-seat restaurant. Everything we do from that restaurant comes from the property. So it's foraged, it's harvested, it's preserved. Think of things like lamb off the property. Think about when you're down on the beach, you run into a local fisherman and he, throws you a couple of crayfish and says, hey, let's cook this up and see what this does. It's creating that non-pretentious version of New Zealand luxury, which the collective we is what we do. Next slide. I think when we talk about Wharekoho, one of the main things to talk about is, look, when you have a luxury lodge in New Zealand, you know that the rooms are going to be great. It's an expectation. You know the food will be phenomenal. It's an expectation. I think what makes us a little different from a number of the properties in New Zealand is with 3,000 acres as our own playground, 3,000 acres that consists of black sand beaches, it consists of river valleys, mountain tops. We have the ability to become our own outfitter. So on the property, we employ a number of in-house guides. So when you come and stay with us, you're going to go out and you're going to, cocktail hour the night before, you're going to say, hey, Richard, I really feel like being a little adventurous. And I'm going to have a couple of glasses of wine and I'm going to say, oh, what does that entail? And you're going to tell me maybe some clay target shooting, maybe some quad biking, maybe going and doing a bit of archery down at the range. Then, you may say, I really feel like a relaxing day. You've seen we're in the middle of New Zealand. I want a relaxing day. Great. We have an on-site spa. I have full-time in-house therapists. Right now, probably more for my mental state, but in-house therapists which will look after, massaging, facials, mani, pedi, etc., etc. That, you can dictate the day with me. You might say, Richard, you're in the wine business. We want to go into your local wine region and we really, really want to do some wine tasting. That's great. And instead of going into a cellar door, we're going to take you down into their deep, dark cellars and we're going to try. Have you ever tried Chardonnay from New Zealand that's 2 years, current vintage, 5 years, 20 years old? Let's have some fun with it. Let's be a little bit more, than scratch the surface. Sorry, next slide. The property itself lends itself to being one that really, well, this is an interesting one. I mean, I don't know. Oh, there we go. The property lends itself to being one that is it's a bit cliche, but as much as you want or as little as you want to do on the property. I have a number of people that just love to go out and hike, and they'll hike either a simple hike, 20, 30 minutes to a few of the lookouts, or they'll go up the mountain and spend half a day, or they'll go halfway to Wellington. I mean, the border of the property is vast. It's being a coastal property, we're fairly well taken care of there. Sorry, next slide. But I guess, and yeah, you can switch to the next slide fairly soon as well. But I guess the great thing with this is, looking at us is we say we are a working farm. We have been a working farm. We utilize the benefits of all of that and bring you a product that is, I guess, ultimately very uniquely coastal sheep station New Zealand. I don't really know how many words I can use to describe it, but that's probably the best way to kind of wrap it all together.
Thank you, Richard. I'm sure we have some people that are kind of keen to check it out. As part of the Luxury Lodges group of New Zealand, what preparations are you all making to invite international guests in the future with COVID?
Well, it's probably a question for the Prime Minister. But look, ultimately, we see New Zealand as, we see it as kind of a collective we, the ultimate social distancing. And I'm just going to give you a bit of back to this. My website analytics still to this day, now I am right now full with New Zealanders that cannot travel overseas. However, my biggest analytics are still my numbers are still telling me that the US is still looking at New Zealand, and we're spending the longest time on our site, which says to me that daydreaming is strong, and that collective we of social distancing that we can provide and do is there. I think there should never, in the lodges of New Zealand, I know for a fact that it's not a question of, cleaning standards and this and that. When I see people posting these things, I wonder what they're doing, because that's just normal. But it's that we can collectively social distance you amongst these lodges. I mean, it's the wilderness part that you talk of here. And that's what we do. We do the best.
Perfect. Thank you for your time today. If anyone has any more questions on Ferry Coho, please you can put them in the box and we will return to it at the end of the presentation. Next, we have David Hurst up. He is representing Hollyford Track today. And I know he has a video to kick us off, so I'm going to kind of let that go.
Kia ora everyone, by the way. We'll kick off with a vid.
Located in the spectacular Fiordland National Park, the dramatic Hollyford Track guided wilderness experience is one of New Zealand's greatest walks. Discover a forgotten valley, watched over by a great mountain chief. Follow the pure waters of the Hollyford River to the wild beauty of an untamed coast. Let experts guide you through a fascinating ecosystem full of Maori legends and pioneering endeavour. This 3-day, 2-night, all-inclusive experience is limited to intimate groups of no more than 16. Well-appointed private lodges, fine dining and friendly hosts consummate a special adventure. Accessible hiking, wilderness jet boating and a spectacular scenic flight make the Hollyford a truly unique experience. Internationally revered as a place of outstanding natural value, the Hollyford Track guided wilderness experience takes you to the heart of the most beautiful valley in New Zealand. If there is one experience that delivers the diversity and the very essence of New Zealand's wilderness, it is without a doubt a guided walk through the Hollyford Valley.
Right, that way you get 2 minutes less of listening to me speak, so that's not a bad thing. The first question that's probably on some people's mind, the location, to be consistent. The Hollyford Valley, if you look at the map there, you can see a red dotted line of a helicopter flying down the coast, because that's flying into Milford Sound. So first and foremost, the Hollyford Valley is just north of Milford Sound. So we're also in the Fiordland, the UNESCO World Heritage Park of Fiordland National Park. So that's the location. And I guess what I wanted to talk to today, there's 3 key points I want to get across with regard to the Hollyford Track. And it's probably, wasn't any motorbikes there, I can tell you that. The Hollyford Track, the 3 points, most people when I talk, they are familiar with the Milford Track. You know, there's a high awareness of the Milford Track. So how does a Hollyford Track guided walk compare to a Milford Track? Because geographically, they're in a very similar location. So there are 3 key points. And number 1, it's to do with the topography. The Hollyford Track is a valley walk. Cue the next slide, I guess. Insofar, there are no major mountain passes. Now, to coin a phrase, Sir Edmund Hillary, some of you might be familiar with, when he knocked the bastard off, that physical conquest, if you have hikers that really want to push themselves physically and finish each day knowing they completed 2,000 feet vertical or whatever the case may be, Hollyford's not for them. Okay, the Hollyford is a valley walk, so it's very accessible. And the fact that it's a valley walk, what it does, it opens up this overnight guided walking experience or hiking to a much wider demographic. And to put that in context, the average age of our walkers is somewhere around 55 to 65 years of age. And I would add, when I first walked the Hollyford about 8 years ago, there was a guy, Alan, with us, and he was 82. Very much pushed the boundaries, to be honest, and the guides had a few issues, but that gives you some context. So it's a valley walk, no major mountain passes, so it's very accessible. And we like to say you only need a moderate level of fitness. And to talk to that fitness, before we go to the next slide, let's say on this one, your walking distance is on day 1, it's about 12 miles. Then day 2 is a maximum, is about 8 or 9 miles. And that's actually combined with wilderness jet boating, so we mix things up, as you would have seen in that video. And on the 3rd day, we're just literally exploring the coastline, because this is a mountains to sea experience in Fiordland National Park. So on that last day, it's along the coastline before we have lunch. And then you would have seen a flight. In the video, I must admit, it's a fixed wing aircraft, but we actually have a scenic helicopter flight now on the third day. It's about just under 20-minute airtime. And we take visitors on the last day by helicopter into Milford Sound. So you're actually ticking off another one of those bucket lists, and you experience Milford Sound as you come in. So that's location, topography, and the second key point, which really transcends Hollyford to be, obviously I'm very biased, but I think it's the best guided walking experience in the country. It's the fact that our groups have a maximum size of 16 hikers or walkers. So maximum 16 people. For example, and when I said earlier, contrasting, say, to a Milford Track experience, when you set forth on a Milford Track guided walk, the group size is typically 50 into this amazing landscape. And sort of what Richard was talking about earlier, by the way, in terms of lodges, there's a consistency of expectation around food and the stand of the lodges. The Milford Track, the Rootburn, Abel Tas, are all stunning, incredible locations. And the Hollyford, the difference is when you actually go on this experience and you have a group of 16 as opposed to 50. And that's where the major part of what separates Hollyford from any other guided walk that I'm aware of, it's the guide interpretation. It's the way we can interact with people, because there are only 16 people in the group. We'll carry 2 guides with a group of 16.
Speaking of the overnight accommodation too, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. So obviously we can share later. We've got other links and other information we can share, but we have our own lodges. So we have the first night is at Pike Lodge, and night 2 is at Martin's Bay Lodge. And this actually, that image behind me that you might be able to see there, that's Martin's Bay from the air. There's 8 twin rooms to accommodate the 16 guests. And they're actually, at the moment, we're completely refurbishing the lodges because before COVID came along, New Zealand had our fair share of natural incidents, let's call it. So from volcanoes through to flooding. So the Hollyford Valley had a 1 in 100 years sort of event, as Fiordland did. So our lodges were actually quite damaged by flooding. So right now they've been gutted and renovated. So we're going to have brand new lodges when we open for the start of the season in January this year. But so that's Pike River Lodge, Martins Bay Lodge. They're our own lodges. The rooms themselves, twin style, quite large bunks. Again, we've got images that we can share later. Then we have separate showers and toilet facilities. And we are at the moment looking for the 21-22 season to enhance and provide ensuite facilities as well. Just in terms of that image, before we leave this one on the screen, you might see, if you're able to see the image very well, there's a couple of famous Americans that we had join us earlier this year. And just behind the Hollyford sign on the right-hand side, there's a chap behind. He's using the force as he goes through the Hollyford Track that trip. So that's all hand solo to us. Harrison Ford and Callista. And it was an interesting story because they actually, when they were looking to do a guided walk in New Zealand, they asked, as I was saying earlier, they had requested the Milford Track because that's what they'd heard of. That's what they're aware of. But the 50 people group size was just too big a hurdle for them. And they basically got introduced to the Hollyford Track, joined us. The guides didn't know the details. It was all a bit hush-hush. But they absolutely loved it. And Callista, his wife, texted, it was just perfect. They had an absolute ball. So they did the Hollyford with their son. So group size, and again, just talking to that group size, it means our guides, and if we go to the next slide, I guess to back up sort of some of the storytelling that goes on, you are going from a mountainous rainforest environment on day 1 with the beach rainforest. By day 2, it's a completely different species of forest, a podocarp rainforest, as you are heading to the coast. Because the coast, the vegetation changes from coastal environment to inland. All the species change as you go through. And the beautiful thing about the Hollyford, you are learning about all these changes as you go through. because we have a small group of 16, the guides are able to pause, and if I was able to retain more than about 2% of what the guides share as we go along the track, I'd be like a botanist at the moment. It's fascinating. So the flora, the fauna, and then the ancient stories, the Maori history. The area is sacred for Ngāi Tahu in the South Island, and that the Hollyford Valley was also the location for the most high grade of onamu or greenstone in the valley. So there's a lot of Maori myths and legends and history in the Hollyford Valley that is shared, as well as the early settler, the pioneer stories, a guy called Davy Gunn that you learn about and grow fond of as you go through the valley. So that storytelling, or that outdoor education as you go from this mountain to the ocean, it's really special. And for a lot of people, when they've walked the Hollyford, it's almost a spiritual experience, because you're just getting this off the grid into this valley in Fiordland National Park. But at the same time, each night, staying in our lodges with venison, might be venison on night one, barbecue venison, or blue cod on the second night, drinking Fiordland local beer, or some of it sampling some of the New Zealand wines at the lodges. So that environment, and to that at the lodge, you're all sitting around the same dinner table, because our group size is maximum 16. You're literally having breakfast and dinner around the table, sharing it with your guides. You become this small, intimate group. You exchange email addresses, share photos after the trip, that sort of thing. So it's a valley walk. There's small group sizes, and then fundamentally, the guiding experience we can deliver as a result of that small group size, it really is something special. I'm not sure. Cue the next slide. Yeah, and my little reminder here, again, just to reinforce, it's this transcendence from the mountains to the sea, and you're combining hiking, wilderness jet boating, because the jet boat section of the Hollyford actually enables us to take out about a day's walking on the Freedom Track. So if someone does this on their own, the Hollyford's about a 5-day walk, 4 or 5 days. So by us bringing in the jet boat, we take out the only mountainous part of the track, but it gives that diversity to the experience as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on the last day, after exploring the coastline, we have lunch, and then you hop on a helicopter and have this incredible scenic flight down into Milford Sound on the 3rd day. And you might be about to ask me, Laura, do we pick up at hotels, that sort of thing? It is all door to door. So we'll pick up at accommodation in Queenstown or Te Anau, and then we drop off at their accommodation in Queenstown or Te Anau. There's probably the other question.
What I was going to ask you is, you're done with your hike, you're ready to celebrate and have a glass of wine. What's your favorite watering hole to go to?
Mine is Pike Lodge. And actually, you say that because on the first day, you're walking 12 miles, and it's the last probably 2 miles feel like about 5, because you're sort of ready for getting the dry horrors. You walk up to the lodge, and Pike River Lodge Bar, having been able to have this disconnect of being in the middle of nowhere. There's no roads here, you know. And the other thing about Hollyford, there's very few hikers on the track anyway, because of its access issues at the coastal end. So if you see humans, it's a novelty. It really is. So by the time you get to the end of the track on day 1, this little Pike Lodge in the middle of nowhere under Mount Madeline, having a beer at Pike Lodge is my favorite place to have a drink.
Cool, thank you. And then we just have one quick question. One of our guests asked, she sees windbreakers and long socks, so maybe you can chat a little bit about the weather there.
Yeah, the weather. We operate our normal seasons, because we're all in a COVID world at the moment, but our season is October through April, so that's New Zealand's sort of spring through autumn, with summer in the middle there. But we provide a detailed gear list. So what's typical is in the mornings, people rug up. They might have long johns in spring or autumn as they start the walk, with their woolen socks and 3 layers on top for the morning as they set out. By about an hour into the walk, they're stripping off layers, and the weather's warmed up. But we don't operate in the depths of winter, but it certainly can be changeable for weather. in this valley. So we have a detailed gear list of what to provide, because to that, you carry your pack on day one, and it's only 2 nights away. It weighs probably about 16 pounds thereabout for your pack. That's day one. Days 2 and 3, you just put that in the jet boat. We look after the gear, and you just carry a day bag with your drink bottle and your layers.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Kia ora. Thank you.
I'm going to pass along to Shannon to introduce Patrick and Brad. A reminder, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to send them through.
All right, thanks, Laura. We're going to turn it over to Patrick Dahl. Patrick is with a company called Endeavours, and he is going to talk a bit about things to do in and around Rotorua. So Patrick, it's over to you.
All right, kia ora no mai here mai ki Aotearoa ki Rotorua nui ahu kahu matamomoe, which is actually a greeting that you probably hear here in Rotorua, which is good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to Rotorua. And actually the real name Rotorua is actually Rotorua nui a kahu matamomoe. So Rotorua for short. So today I am going to take you on a little journey to my adoptive homeland, which is the North Island of New Zealand. We're going to explore, how the North Island sort of makes the perfect complement to that beautiful scenery that my colleagues in the South have basically, so delightfully shown. But actually, it is that complement, it is that combination of quite dramatic changes that it makes New Zealand basically, in my eyes, the perfect place to live. So if you will change the slide, please. So in general, the things to do in North Island, right? Like I was saying, why is the North Island the perfect complement to the South? Well, usually for one part is the names are quite complementary, right? One's called the North Island, one's called the South Island. So as if they're made to be together. I'm still trying to figure out that last one, Stewart Island. They're also pretty close. So they're actually at their closest point, just under 14 miles apart, which is I used to illustrate how, they're completely different landscapes, but they're pretty darn close when not when you're swimming those 14 miles, by the way, which are quite treacherous lands of water, but it is quite an amazing place that in such a short, distances, you can have such dramatic changes in landscapes. So what would you do on your North Island? So you've seen the beautiful scenery, you've seen the amazing walks and landscapes and the fjords, of Doubtful and Milford Sound, which, still to this day, that Doubtful Sound overnight experience is, I'd rate, one of the best things I've ever done in my life. But in the North Island, this is where you typically experience Maori culture. You'll have, especially in a place like Rotorua where I live, this is where, that whole culture is quite vibrant. We've got that cultural connection and a lot of history. It's also where you'd explore a whole the volcanic side of New Zealand. So you can actually see, how the country was formed right there, in the mountains. It's written in the mountains, and I'll show you a way to get there and sort of to see it for yourself. But it's absolutely stunning. You can see the sediment. You can see, up down to 50,000 years ago. Also, it's a place to indulge. Lots of people, the British actually, when they first came to New Zealand, they actually thought they'd found the Fountain of Youth. And, joke was on them because they hadn't. They actually found the Fountain of Beauty, because if you look at me, I live here and, my mom says I'm handsome. So, but all kidding aside though, it is a place where you'd indulge in the spas and, our hot springs. They're not only confined to, buildings and places, like the likes of, our established spas, but you can also find them, nestled in the bush. You can find some naturally occurring hot springs, and, we've got helicopters and float planes and guides that will take you there. So I can't guarantee eternal youth, but you'll feel a whole lot better after you've taken a swim. Then after that, like my friends in the South explained, New Zealand's synonymous with outdoors, right? So, you know, this is, especially in the North Island, we've got a temperate forest. So it actually is, it's temperate rainforests. So the nature is just, you know, everywhere. So you don't have to travel very far, you know, from any location that you'll find yourself, you know, in a bush, in a dense forest where it's actually stunning. And then the last but not least, New Zealand's Middle Earth. So, you know, I wouldn't do it justice if I didn't mention my friends at Hobbiton, which is, they're about 45 minutes from my place. So, you know, if you want to get your Hobbit on, Hobbiton's a great place. I think some of my colleagues from down under Endeavours have been there. You know, I think they may have experienced it, so they can take it from them. They'll tell you exactly when's the best time to go. And last but not least, you know, lots of adventure stuff. So if adventure is throwing yourself out of a plane, we've got that. But sometimes adventure is just like in that picture, an elevated walk in a redwood forest. And when you're standing 60 feet from the ground, that's adventurous enough for you. Well, we got that too. So if you'll change the slide, please. So one of the products I work with, so it's called Volcanic Air. So they are the premier float plane and scenic float plane and helicopter tour company in the North Island. So basically what these guys do is they take you to some of the landmarks. So the North Island is a volcanic caldera. So this means that we've got a whole bunch of volcanoes. Some are active, some are dormant. But the reality is that to be able to appreciate the region, when you get, you know, just 1,000 feet in the air, you can take it in all its grandeur. It's absolutely stunning. You get to visit some locations, and the highlights of these trips usually are there's about 5 major landmarks, which are the Tarawera Falls. Now, if you click next, I don't think that picture is coming up today, but that's okay, we'll stay on this one. So the Tarawera Falls, it's a waterfall that basically pops out of a mountain at 215 feet in the air. So it's absolutely stunning. Of course, that's not the picture here, but you know, if you close your eyes and, you know, think of a beautiful waterfall, well, that's what it is. Then we've got a mountain called Mount Tarawera. So that's a landmark for us because it's a sacred mountain and it stands about 3,700 feet at its peak. So it's not that tall. However, it gives you, when you take a helicopter and you land on the summit, now the ladies from the UE, talk to them, many of them have done it, but the beauty is that once a year I take the pilots and we go and see them, well, pre-COVID that is, and we give them updates and we make sure that they're well aware of anything that's happening on that mountain. So they're our first point of contact. So, but anyways, going back to Mount Tarawera, you'll be able to land on this dormant volcano, and then you'll be able to see all the way to the Pacific Ocean, our chain of volcanoes, and you'll actually be standing inside the fault line of the Pacific Rim of Fire, which is pretty special. You actually be able to walk down the Ring of Fire, which is not on fire, by the way. So it's quite cool to the touch, and but it's absolutely stunning. You're standing there and you can see, you know, Earth, and you can see the whole planet, you know, breathing basically. Then you'll have a place called Watapu, which is our version of the prismatic pool. So it's a magnificent orange pool. So as you fly over it, you know, you get to imagine this orange pool that is boiling away with sulfuric acid, and you know, a great way to dispose of a body. I think Jimmy Hoffa could be in there. Anyways, I digress. And then after that, you've got Waimangu, which is another geothermal park. So we've got all these geothermal parks, and the one you see on the picture is actually called Orake Korako. It's actually in Taupo, and they call it the Hidden Valley. And I don't know if you can see, but on the upper right of the image, there's like a little passageway. So this is a huge area, and it's absolutely stunning. Like there's nothing like it in the world. It's blue, orange, brown, and you know, that's you know, a slice of earth only a few people get to see. Next slide, please, if you'll indulge me. So as we make our way to Taupo, Taupo is a huge lake. Now I realize I'm talking to people from Chicago, and you guys have actually bigger lakes. But anyways, I digress. That's a big lake. It's the second largest lake in the Southern Hemisphere, and it's actually the same size as the city of Chicago. So the lake is 238 square miles, and the city of Chicago is 234.21 square miles. So it's pretty cool. It's home to about 39,000 people, or 1.5% of Chicago's population. So there's a lot less people. So anyways, it's not great for shopping or clubbing, or that the sort of if for you city slickers, which would explain the font. But it is a great place to get in touch with the outdoors. And the guys that will connect you with those outdoors is a company called Chris Jolly Outdoors. They've even got outdoors in their name, so that must be, it must be true. So basically what they do is they specialize in anything like hiking, bird watching, or birding, snowshoeing, if that's your cup of tea, or what for today's sort of focus, it's fly fishing. Because Taupo is one of the best, is one of the internationally recognized locations in the world for fly fishing. These guys offer half-day guided fishing experiences and full-day guided fishing experiences. So it's you and the guide. And a lot of people say to me, well, Patrick, what's the big deal? Well, in some of our lakes, like Lake Rotomahana, it is said to have the world's the purest strain of rainbow trout. So it's an untouched part. And like David was saying from the South Island, this is an untouched part of the world. It's absolutely stunning. So anyways, so you can fish on the affluent rivers, and the guides will take you to private water. And the private water, it means that nobody else gets to go there. So, as any trips, once again, connect with the ladies from Down Under Endeavours, and they'll tell you exactly, they can fine tune. Each package is personalized. So it's not, something you can buy in a box, or, you can find some more information with these ladies, and they'll be able to exactly fine tune the perfect trip. Raft fishing, if you want to get even further into that wilderness, with no footprint, put you on a raft, you go for a full day, you'll find some remote watering spots, and then you'll be fishing, and you'll be fishing from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m., which is absolutely stunning. Heli fishing, so you can take with the guys from Volcanic Air that I was telling you about, and your guide from Chris Jolly is going to jump on the helicopter with you, and then that's the cream of the cream. You'll be flown off to a remote location, in the shadow of a volcano, and you'll be fishing, waters that basically seldomly see people any time of the year. And then last but not least, I think that's the picture of my next slide, actually, Shannon. It's Lake Taupo. So this is Lake Taupo. So this is a crowded day in Lake Taupo. So the lake is huge, but this, that's New Zealand. New Zealand gives you access to the best, and you've got it by yourself. So going back to David's point about social distancing, it's not that difficult in New Zealand to social distance. It's basically getting these experiences and putting your trip together with DUE. It's that's a cakewalk.
So Patrick, one quick question for you.
Yeah.
So with all of these, the stuff that you're talking about, what if you just had to, put together two ultimate experiences in the area, what would you put together? Something like volcanic air, and what would you do?
So what I do is I probably take volcanic air, fly off to see that scenery. So sightseeing is the number one. That's what people want to do, right? They want to see the scenery, and they want to, and I think flying over, doing that the thermal explorer trip, which has you landing on both the Mount Tarawera and at that colorful place, it land you at Oraki Korako. You get to walk around these locations, and also you're flying through a whole bunch of stuff, above a whole bunch of volcanic fields. And then I combine that with the next day with, a guided fly fishing experience, like I was saying. So you can combine the both. It doesn't mean that you have to, and we're not talking something, that it's accessible for everyone. Like it's really is, especially with the strength of the US dollar. I mean, it's really accessible. It's one of our, New Zealand's still a exceptional value for money, even for our premium experiences. So I'd say, you can do that sort of either in the morning and in the afternoon a fish, or actually even better, you probably take first day, you do your sightseeing and you sort of do your reconnaissance. And then the next day, you head to the lakes and you get in touch with that nature.
All right, and one last question for you. Being your adoptive area of Rotorua, what is your favorite local watering hole or a restaurant in Rotorua?
There's a couple. I've got to say, we've got a pretty cool little winery from a really. It's about people, right? So one of the wineries is called Volcanic Volcanic Hills, and Volcanic Hills Winery is a pretty cool winery. It's actually at Skyline, which is you get there in a gondola, and it's a pretty cool story. It's a passionate guy. He's basically, when you walk in, he's got his business plan, and his business plan is etched on an easel on a blackboard. It says, "Steal grapes from the great regions of New Zealand, and drive them at night into my winery, and then make exceptional wine." And he's a winemaker that worked all over the world, and he's internationally recognized. But he's come back home to Rotorua to make this spectacular wine now. And then another restaurant, I'd say it would have to be. There's a little place in a twist of irony. The very last dine-in Pizza Hut in New Zealand was transformed into a sort of like gastropub called Terrace Kitchen, and I'd say that's probably my favorite. The chef there, his name is I forget his name now, but the chef there, he prepares amazing, sort of, the menu changes daily, and it's absolutely stunning. So it's a great finish, after you've been on your helicopter ride, you can, grab a bottle of wine and, sharing platters. And Timo Decker, this is the chef, he'll prepare pretty amazing stuff. So really, really delightful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Patrick.
Cheers, thank you.
So absolutely. So last but absolutely not least in our hearts is Brad Patterson from the helicopter line. And so Pato, I'm gonna let you take it away to talk a little bit about all things helicopter in New Zealand.
Thanks a lot for that, Shannon, and welcome to everybody, and thanks a lot for coming along and joining us today. I'll get you to flick one wee slide across there for me, and I'm just gonna give you guys a little bit of a run through on our company, the Helicopter Line. The Helicopter Line, we are New Zealand's largest scenic helicopter flight operator, based wholly solely in the South Island of New Zealand. We do operate from 6 helicopter bases, and if I could get you please to flick just one more slide on that there for me, thank you. So for those of you that don't have a great geographical knowledge of New Zealand, looking at the South Island of New Zealand, on the west coast, we operate out of Franz Josef and Fox Glacier. There's a big mountain range that runs down the middle called the Southern Alps, and on the eastern side we have 3 bases there. We have one at Mount Cook Airport, we have one at Glentana Park, we also operate out of Tekapo, and also down out of Queenstown. So on the west coast of the South Island, everything there is about seeing Franz Josef and Fox Glacier. So we do 20-minute, 30-minute and 40-minute flights, taking people up and landing them on those unique glaciers of the west coast. On the eastern side, it's more of a focus around doing helicopter flights up and landing on sort of the Richardson, the Zodiac, or the Tasman Glacier. Out of both Mount Cook and also the west coast, we do offer heli hiking, and we work in conjunction with David and Naitahu Tourism to offer heli hiking on the west coast, which enables people to go up and walk on a glacier for 2 hours. Down in Queenstown, and this is sort of my hometown, its focal point is it's about the lakes, the mountains, the rivers, and the gateways to Milford Sound in terms of flying by helicopter here. And I've been asked today to sort of focus on what I think is probably the premium product or trip that we do offer as a unique experience for people to go out and experience the region of Fiordland from Queenstown. So if you could please just flick on one more slide there for me. So looking at the aircraft that we do operate, we only operate the Airbus helicopter. So what you see here is exactly what you would fly in if you were doing a trip with us. We currently have 21 of these helicopters in our fleet. These aircraft have all forward-facing seats with 4 seats in the back, 2 seats in the front with 180-degree panoramic views. If you could flick one more slide for me there, please. Hopefully this doesn't strobe too much. Here we go. So what you can actually see from the interior of the helicopter, we have all leather corporate interior, top of the line David Clark headsets. And as I just mentioned before, 4 seats in the back, 2 seats in the front with 180-degree panoramic views. So no matter where you are sitting in the aircraft, you are going to be able to have a great view. A lot of people do say to me, I'm a little bit nervous about flying, or they struggle with heights. If that's the case, you can sit in the back middle seat, so you're looking straight ahead as a set view, rather than being at the side and looking down for some people when you're flying along sort of 5,000 or 6,000 feet. Can you please flick one more slide for me? Cool. So I got asked to tell you guys today what I think is one of the most amazing, unique trips that we offer. And this, to me, I think really ticks all the boxes in terms of what is a unique experience for people to do while they come out to New Zealand. It's our Fiordland Lodge Heli Lunch trip. And this trip here departs from Queenstown. It heads out through Skipper's Canyon and over towards the Matukituki Valley and Mount Aspiring National Park. We then fly through the Forbes mountain range, and through the Forbes mountain range is a series of glaciers in and around that region. So you're going to have the Jura, the Clark, the Grant, the Isabel Glacier. We will do a glacier landing there before we then head over and land on the remote west coast. So you can see sort of there's a big bay there. That's just north of the Holyford Valley where David does his walking. We'll land on the west coast, and while we're over there, we will put in divers to go and grab your lunch for you. So it's about amazing fresh produce. We'll get some fresh crayfish, maybe some kinna. We then hop back in the helicopter and follow the coastline down, and we overhead Milford Sound before following the Milford track and doing a landing at Lake Quill. We then follow down Lake Tiana to land at Fiordland Lodge for your lunch. And what you'll see in the video that I'm going to show you in a minute, it's about showcasing the amazing fresh produce that we do have within our region. So while you're there, your first platter of food will be about the sea. So you will get to taste paua. You will get to taste, or abalone as it's more commonly known in the North American market. You will get to have the fresh crayfish that your diver has got you will be cooked for you. You will try groper, and you will also try whitebait. You'll then move on to a second platter of food, which is from the land. And this is going to be a focus on venison, beef, and lamb. And then you'll have amazing dessert platter. This is all available with an open bar. Now, it is house wine and beer that is actually physically available, but there is a premium wine list that is available at Fiordland Lodge for you to select from, or for your clients to purchase from should they wish to do so. Unique thing about Fiordland Lodge, it is styled on a North American hunting lodge. It has amazing pristine views out across Lake Tiana. And I think it just really, you know, what we're seeing more and more nowadays is as there is a proliferation of people that think that they are food critics or MasterChef shows, etc., coming through. It's about people are wanting to sort of do an experience that touches their soul and leaves an imprint on them, rather than something that's just a cookie cutter. This is it from the box, and away we go. After you've had your lunch, we then hop on the helicopter and fly back to Queenstown. So that is a unique full day experience that leaves at 9 o'clock in the morning, gets back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the scenery that you're going to see, it's consistently changing every 15 minutes. You leave from sort of an arid sort of desert environment of central Otago, flying through Skipper's Canyon, meeting the glacial belts, then into the sort of the Holyford Valley and that unique rainforest that we do have on the west coast, before continuing down through the lakes of Tiana and Fiordland. So I will click over to a video now, and please enjoy the experience that we offer if you come and do this trip with us. Or you can turn the music off if you want, because I find it quite painful. So as I said, you are flying through the Mount Aspiring National Park. You are going to see glaciers before you then head into the Fiordland National Park. This is coming down Big Bay to that remote coastline that we were talking about. I'm keeping it. Thanks, Doug. Part of this trip... Thanks, Candice. So this is a Sutherland Falls. So this is the second highest waterfall in the Southern Hemisphere. You do come up and do a landing at the top here. And once again, it's about showcasing, I mean, obviously you missed the crayfish photo there in the deer, but as you sort of get the options of what you're going to see, I can send this video through to you all so you can actually watch it without it sort of strobing. But this is at the lodge itself. And Andy, who is the lodge manager down there in owner, he's great. He's a typical quintessential Kiwi bloke, and he'll talk you through various things. But I just think that there is really something that just will tick all the boxes for people as we head on through. So as I said, at our other locations, we do cater for 20-minute, 30-minute and 40-minute flights. But if you are talking about, you know, something that is just off the shelf amazing, that there will tick all the boxes for everybody. And happy to take any questions as we go forward.
I think we've been answering most of the questions as they come up. Brad, just one quick question for you. I know that you've been on a helicopter a lot. What's your favorite location that you fly to?
You know, I've got a couple of different locations, and it sort of also, you know, depends on the people I'm traveling with. Like recently we jumped in a helicopter when we went over to the West Coast. We were relocating a helicopter to Franz Josef, and we landed at Jackson's Bay, and there's a little wee crayfish caravan there that does, you know, blue cod and chips and crayfish, and you can sit on the beach and just look out at a pier that comes out. Last weekend, I jumped in a helicopter with 4 of my mates, and we went down to the bottom of the South Island and went fishing for the day. You know, it's, you know, that they're unique experiences, but even just a quick hop in a helicopter up to Cecil Peak with views back out over Queenstown, because for me, and that's actually where we had our wedding photos done, it just gives people a completely different perspective. Because if people Google Queenstown, for argument's sake, every photo they see generally comes from up at the Skyline gondola looking down onto Queenstown. So to be on the other side of the lake and have that panoramic view back towards the Ben Lomond saddle in the town, I think is pretty spectacular.
And Brad, how long is that if they just are going to go over and do that? How long is that turnaround?
20-minute flight.
Yeah, so it's quick. I mean, and your Southern Glacier experience too, the 45-minute out of Queenstown is another really nice quick hop to do if people.
It is, because quite often what we find is a lot of people do dual destination of New Zealand and Australia, and they've only got roughly 11 days to physically, you know, to get through and see as much of the country as they possibly can. And as much as I encourage people to go to the West Coast, it does take 3 days out of your itinerary. So for a lot of people, they don't realise that you can actually do a glacier landing and flight from Queenstown. So you can actually fly direct into Queenstown, and then you can do that 50-minute flight. You can do a landing on the glacier, you view Loch Nagar, Skipper's Canyon. And I know your family enjoyed that when they went and did that trip when you were out here.
Well, awesome. Well, I know that we've gone a bit over the time that we said we would, but I know we also had some technical difficulties. So I'm going to turn it back over to Laura to wrap up and make sure that we've answered everybody's questions. I want to say just a special shout out to all of the Kiwis on the call today. Thank you so much. I think all of our American friends really enjoyed the accents and also all of the great knowledge that you guys have given. And of course, now we're all just super ready for, you know, Jacinda better let us in soon, or we're just going to come beat down the door in New Zealand.
Yeah, ditto what Shannon said. Thank you so much for showing up today. It really means a lot. Patrick, your accent's a little off, but we love the pronunciation, so you made up for it. I did just want to go back to kind of what we talked at the very beginning, which was borders. Officially, there is no opening date. So everything that we mention is speculation. You know, if you have any specific questions, reach out to the person that you're working with or reach out to us, and one of us would be happy to answer it for you. You know, we like to give suggestions. We're not always right. So officially, the word is there is no word. We are just taking our best guess. Candace, if you can flip slides, please. We do have one more. We do have one more Travel Tuesday scheduled. That is going to be based on Safari, and we will have guests from Singita, which is a fabulous company that has properties kind of throughout several different countries. So keep your eyes peeled for an email